Is Lewis Miley finally ready to break into Newcastle's first choice midfield? Newcastle have lacked control all season, but when Miley steps in, not only the midfield, but the whole team looks better. In this video, I'll break down his impact this season, how his game is developed, what role suits him best, and what his emergence means for the future of Newcastle's midfield. Still only 19 years old, this could be Miley's breakthrough season. Lewis Miley is now the youngest Premier League and Champions League goal scorer in the entire club's history. So what is it about his recent performances that have put him in contention for a regular starting spot? Now, his performances against Fulham and Benfica showed early promise, but in the next 5 games across all competitions, he played a total of 26 minutes. But then came that game against Everton. He put in a complete performance, and we'll come on to the goal and assists, but one of the most exciting things from that game was the relationship that he built up with Bruno, how close they played to each other, and the amount of little 1-2s that they played to retain the ball, and like in this case, also break through that Everton midfield. And his output in terms of goals and assists this season has been so good to see for his development. And although that goal against Everton came with a slice of luck, that confidence to take that shot from the edge of the box with his weaker foot when it's bouncing up on the half volley was so good to see. And his previous goals in the Premier League show that composure and ball striking ability and the ability to get more goals in the future. With his weaker foot coming on the angle and still striking it low and hard into that bottom right hand corner. And then you also got that first goal for the club arriving into the box, getting that pass from Bruno and tucking it away into that bottom left hand corner. But his goal against Leverkusen shows something else, something that shows that he can score a lot more goals in the future, and it had a lot more skill than meets the eye. He positions himself on the edge of the box, just waiting to see what happens, but as soon as Gordon makes that movement, chooses which way he's going to go, drives to the byline, Miley comes alive, and he starts to make that movement into the box, but it's the timing of it, just waiting for Gordon to make that shift, and then he bursts to get away from his marker. He sees Voltemada make that run to the near post, which vacates that central area and makes a lovely run directly into the middle of the goal post. He actually gets pushed, leaping for this ball, which makes the execution look a little bit awkward, but it's because of that physical contact as he jumps to reach the ball. But it's that beautiful header, just cushion it whilst under physical pressure into that bottom right hand corner. And the thing that's so exciting about this goal is that every time you think you know what Miley does, he adds an extra layer to his game. That ability to make that late run into the box is something we haven't seen, and he even said himself in the post-match interview that he's used to scoring so many goals in the academy. So if he can bring that skill set to the first team, he'll be a guaranteed starter. But what happened over the last year to turn Lewis Miley from a young prospect into a player that can break apart one of the best midfields in the Premier League? Miley looks bigger. He looks like he's filling out into that tall, lengthy frame, and he looks comfortable dealing with that physical load. If we look at something as simple as the amount of aerials that he wins per game, it jumped up from 0.82 in that breakout season to 1.97 per game this season. And this is where you have to give Eddie Howe credit, to have that patience to allow him to fill out into that frame. Last year, he had quite a lot of injuries and he could have played him towards the end of last season, but he chose to keep him back, play him in the odd game and just let him rebuild his fitness slowly. And now he looks stronger, ready for the challenge of a physical Premier League. But not only that, he looks more composed, more confident on the ball. It looks like he knows who he is as a player, and tactically he knows where to be in this Eddie Howe system. And if you look at his FBref radar, especially the technical side of things, it doesn't look that impressive. If you look at his passes attempted, the progressive passes, carries and successful take-ons are so low compared to other midfielders. But it doesn't paint the full picture. Now I understand that one of the biggest criticisms of Lewis Miley in previous games is that he plays the safer pass. But I would challenge that, because I think at only 19, one of his best traits is his decision making. He plays the right pass at the right time, and his risk profile on the ball isn't anything like Bruno Guimaraes. But what he's able to do is he's able to retain the ball for us, especially away from home. And he's so switched on defensively. The amount of tackles and interceptions he makes, not only that he makes them, but the timing of them and how cleanly he wins the ball are so impressive. And his mentality is so impressive. He's been able to deliver in some of our biggest games over the past few seasons. But given he has such a rounded skill set, what actually is his best position both in the short term and in the long term. Now, one of the most impressive things about Lewis Miley is that he's able to influence the game across all three thirds. He's able to retain and progress the ball when playing out from the back, deep in our own third. He's able to find those little passes that keep the tempo of the game moving when in the middle third, and he's shown he can influence that final third, both with the assists he got against Brighton and also the goals he's been getting over the past few seasons. If you look at his heat map from this season, he's absolutely everywhere in that midfield, and it's because he's been given that box-to-box license by Eddie Howe. Initially, when I first saw him play, the one player he reminded me of, maybe more due to his frame, and he's nowhere near the quality of this player yet, is Michael Carrick. Tall, elegant, doesn't seem like he's really breaking a sweat during the game. And that temptation is there to treat him as a rotation option with Tonali in that number 6. But the more and more I see him play, the more I think he's going to be a box-to-box midfielder. I don't think you can pigeonhole him in that number 6 position. He doesn't score the goal he scored against Leverkusen playing in that number 6. He scores that goal by being given the license to move further forward and influence the game in the final third. And given his high potential, the biggest worry about Lewis Miley is that he never nails a position and masters it. So there is going to come a point where him and Eddie Howe would need to nail a position and allow him to really develop his craft in that role. But in the short term, his ability to play in all three midfield positions gives him game time, which is vital for his development. But how do his performances impact both the short-term and long-term outlook of this Newcastle midfield? As of right now, the midfield trio of Bruno, Tonali and Joelinton, the one that brought us so much success over the past few seasons, just doesn't seem to be clicking. And from an individual perspective, there's one player that has struggled more than others. Joelinton has struggled to really recapture his best form for the club. Both physically and technically, he's looked off it this season. And right now, Miley deserves more game time than Joelinton. But we still would need to find the right midfield balance with Miley, Tonali and Bruno. In the Leverkusen game, Bruno was moved to the left centre midfield spot, Tonali stayed in the number 6, and Miley was played in that right centre midfield position. And that allowed us to get the second goal. But it takes away one of our trademark moves. The one where Bruno pops into that right half space role, plays in behind that right winger of Elanga or Murphy, and then play that low cross into the box for either the striker or the back post winger to tap in. But although we will need to adapt to it, I do think that Bruno can play that left centre midfield role, and Miley can execute that right centre midfield role as well. And the balance of all three would make it a tough fight for anyone, both physically, technically and tactically against that midfield trio. It would allow us to retain the ball far better, especially away from home where we've lacked that midfield control. But to understand how important Miley is, we have to look into the long term. If we look at the next couple of years, Joelinton is already struggling for form this season, Tonali has already spoken about his future in the press over the past couple of months, and Bruno, our captain, even if he stays, his legs will start to go pretty soon. Miley's all-round game, tactical flexibility and game intelligence are so impressive, especially for a player that's 19 years old. And it's going to be so important for a midfield that will need to evolve over the next couple of seasons. And let's not have another Elliot Anderson situation. Whether it's for PSR reasons or not, we have to keep hold of another academy graduate. We've seen a lot more from Miley than we saw from Elliot Anderson before he made that move. And we now need to have the right conditions, the right game time to get the best out of Miley's development. Because Miley isn't just an academy graduate anymore. He's starting to prove that he belongs at the elite level and should be starting in that current midfield three. So would you trust Miley to start in our midfield regularly from now on? Would you start him in the derby? And what do you think is actually his best position? Let me know all of that down in the comments. And another player that can potentially transform our season is Johan Wissa. Check out this breakdown analysis on how he makes our attack dangerous again.